Hi all, welcome to this Marquee Matchups for the 6th of October. Plenty to cover as usual, lots of games in this game week, so it will be interesting to see what way EA take this. But we can smash likes, all too much appreciated. Sub to the channel if you're new, follow me on Twitter at GSLegend, all links down below for links to the channel and social media links as always. Comment down below what investments you're going to go for, what for you fancy, and also let me know if you got 4 out of 4 or whatever for this game week. So obviously last week's ones were Porto Braga, Sevilla Atletico, Inter Roma and Manchester City v Manchester United. So the instant assumption is Premier League probably will get ignored to an extent, maybe even Serie A, despite Arsenal Liverpool being one big Premier League game. Then Serie A has two big ones with a central, like one of the central derbies as it's called, like Central Italy derby, which is Fiorentina v Lazio and Milan v Juventus. Ligue 1 has a standout game in the form of Lens v Lille, which is very viable, if I'm honest. It is deemed a derby. Bundesliga though should be a lock. It's just a case of which one. Bayern v Dortmund is the most obvious because it's the Klassiker, but Cologne versus Mönchengladbach equally gets some attention. Then obviously from there we can go over to either Italy in Serie B in the form of Regina versus Cosenza, which would be our first Serie B derby. But if I'm honest, I think for our small option this week, I expect Rapid versus Austria Vienna. In Australia, we have that season starting up there. We have Sydney v Melbourne Victory and Central Coast Mariners v Newcastle Jets. If you want to go over to Sweden, you have Göteborg versus Elfsborg. Belgium has Charleroi v Standard Liège. Chinese Super League has Guangzhou City versus Shenzhen. Irish League has Shamrock Rovers v Shelbourne. Cracovia versus Lechia Gdansk in Poland. We also then have Inter Miami v Orlando, and then Volendam versus Ajax. So, assumption would be, looking at how they've set it up, they're doing generally 3 big games, like say 3 of the big 4 leagues with a small league. So on that assumption, Bundesliga seems a lock. Then probably Serie A would get the nod for another. Lens v Lille, the 4th game in that sense becomes the Vienna derby. That's one assumption anyway. So on that basis, if you wanted to kind of cover your back with players from obviously like Bayern and Dortmund, as we've mentioned previously, for the European like marquee matchups, you can look at, from a Bayern perspective, the easiest ways is like your Ulrichs, your Choupo-Motings, even can't even get my words out. Pavard, Sabitzer, Gravenberch to be a little bit more expensive. They're kind of your more sensible shouts, as it were. Like Bunasar and Josip Stanisic are just a little bit pricey, but if you go the low rated golds, then you're at least covering your back. The thing is, with Dortmund, you have so much more options to work with. Just don't touch Adeyemi because he's a little bit pricey. He's like 1.5k. Donny Malen kind of same applies, but you look at Reina, you look at Wolf, you look at Munir, you look at Modeste, you look at Ozcan, Forgan Hazard, De Hood. If you really wanted to, you can go Brandt as well, or Haller, just for price and rating respectively, and you wouldn't exactly find yourself, say, short of options. If I'm honest, because at the end of the day, at least you have plenty to kind of cover your back with. Lens and Leo, with Lens, plenty of goals to work with, and they're all basically discards. So like Kakuta, Frankowski, Medina's the only one, along with Cabo and Fofana, you really want to kind of keep away from. Cabo is like about 1,000 coins, Medina's like 2.5, and Fofana is just over 1,000 coins. But as I said, Kakuta, Frankowski, Leka, Gradit, Buxa, Sotoka, Danzo and Openda, all worth going for because they're all basically discard. They're all like 400 or 500 coins. Some you might even get a little bit cheaper if you're really on the money, as it were, and it just makes all the difference, because you never know what approach you kind of have to take with it. With Lille, same applies. They have generally all the players except for Ismaili is worth buying simply because he's like 2k. But Font, Benjamin Andre, Jonathan David, Bamba, Jonas Martin, Bayo, Jallo, and Andre Gomez, all of them are generally worth going for. Zadaka is another one that's actually worth going for as well. He's generally one of the cheaper silvers in the game, which is quite baffling, but you just take what you can get at the end of the day. But like, it's handy to have players that are like non-rares, a mix of rares. Like the odd, if you can get the odd rare, you're laughing. But at the same time, with all these guys being generally in that kind of like non-rare bracket, except for like Jallo, who you can basically just get yourself sorted with, because end of the day he's gold rare, just covers your back in case they throw that kind of requirement out there, because we know what EA are like. Even though at this stage of the game they generally will throw in like the cheaper options, like you don't necessarily need to stress yourself about rares. It's more just try to either cover for the club or cover for the league, as it were. From a Lazio perspective, because we'll cover those games like real quick, just as an alternative. Like Lazio, Milan, Juventus, basically all you're looking at is like Vicino, Cassolo, Cataldi, Provedel, Radu, like Haisaj. The good thing is Lazio and Fiorentina, like Jovic and all them, they're dirt cheap, so it's like you're not exactly breaking the bank. Milan's Kettle to Ketelaar, Pobiga if you wanted to. You're not really short of options. You generally find the Juventus players are probably a wee bit more compared to the Milan players, but that's just due to like ratings and prices and option positions. Like Rugani, De Siglio, Moise Keane, Milik, Perrin are all worth nabbing. Like Leandro Paredes, you're not really short of like options, as it were. But with the Vienna derby, obviously being, as I said, the one that I'm kind of more inclined to go towards, just be wary. It's not necessarily be wary, it's more the league that you want to go with. If you're going like the silvers or the like within, just try and aim as low as possible for prices, because you could, like, the reason why the bronzes are a bit of a fatal chance is because of requirements. Like, they might just make it a minimum silver requirement. So if you're looking at your silvers, look at Bernard Zimmerman. He's a striker at 65 rated. Martin Kuchelnik, Jonas Sauer, Paul Gartler is one of the more expensive ones, so keep that in mind. Dejan Petrovic, another cheap one. Kanas Muller, that used to play in the Championship, is another one that you want to cover your back with, usually because he's been quite cheap, and that's what you want to look at. Look for the ones that are like 200-300 coins. If you nab them, you're laughing. From Austria Vienna perspective, it's like James Holland, Randfall, Dominic Fitz, Marvin Martins. Like, they're the silvers that have been basically like discard, because you never know what they might throw in for requirements. They might set it up so that it's one player from, say, each from the league, kind of just make it as cheap as possible, so that way it's maybe one Austrian player and one rare. Then as long as you're at least covering your back with, say, even a player from the teams, that as long as it's like 200 coins, especially when they'll set it up where it's maybe needing a few silvers. Just remember, if it's like 3 or 4 silvers and the rest are bronzes, like, make it cheap as possible for yourself rather than having to spend too much money needlessly on SBCs. And that's the way to kind of generally look at it. But let me know, folks, what approach you're going to take for marquee matchups for this week, and what routes you kind of fancy. As I said, main 4, as we've said, that we like: are Lens and Lille, Bayern Dortmund, Rapid Vienna for Austria Vienna, and then Fiorentina versus Lazio for my options. But we'll see how it plays out, of course, so smash like always, sub the channel if you're new, and I'll catch you all later.